Welcome, everybody, to the B2B Community Builder Show, episode 219. I'm your host and chief executive connector, Pablo Gonzalez. I got a new friend on today. Ryan and I connected. I think this is one of the few pitches I take to be on the show. But whenever somebody has a really, really unique point of view on something, I'm always intrigued. And when someone's reaching out based on a unique point of view, I think it always hits a little bit better than when people are reaching out based on their own kind of like accomplishments and stuff like that. And what Ryan came to me is this idea that he'd been working with companies for a long time as a marketer and finding them new clients. And yet they always would find this bottleneck of, it doesn't matter how many people you bring in as clients, if you don't have the people to serve those clients, then it leads to a bad experience. It leads to bad word of mouth. And therefore you should be executing your hiring practices the same way that you execute on marketing. So he created a whole framework around it. He's got a whole point of view on it. We're going to talk to him today from for the time being, Phoenix, Arizona, Ryan Englin. Welcome to the show, my man.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited about this. We met a couple weeks ago. We got to chat for a few minutes and you went right into it. I love it. Like, it's just so quick, so fast. Like, let's just get to the good stuff. So excited to be here.
I like the good stuff, man. I can tell. The thing is, when I know somebody's got good stuff,
Yeah,
you just ooze good stuff. But anyways, this is a live show, right? We got our community in the house. I know that you got your community in the house, right? Because we got some new names showing up in here. Check into the chat. This is an interactive show. Use the Q&A, be part of the conversation. This is all about you. I want to bring you value. And if you're getting value, I know that the podcast audience gets value. And right around 5:30 Eastern, depending on where you are at, that's a different time zone, but we kick it into the open mic sessions that we're going to do no matter what. So I see Jason Croft checking in. Good to see you, Jason. I see Kim Farmer checking in. Kim, I'm glad you're here. Thanks for setting all this stuff up. It's awesome. I see my friend Pratiti, who I'm going to see this weekend. Super excited. Ryan, I like to just kick it right off with the topic du jour. Make sure everybody's getting what they bargained for, man. When you were talking about acquiring talent and needing to build a marketing style outreach acquisition strategy for talent, why is that so important for businesses today?
I think this goes back 25 years or so. The internet leveled the playing field for everybody. All of a sudden, it's like anybody could play that wanted to play. And the job seekers, the job market, they got wind of this. And they're like, hey, this is so much easier than pulling up a newspaper and driving around town and delivering resumes. They just started applying online. And what I found was we work with a lot of small and medium businesses. They didn't get the memo or something happened. And they didn't realize that that's where all the job seekers went, was online. And just like you market your business online, I mean, people tell me all the time, like, you just have to have a website. Like, if you don't have a website today, you might as well not be in business. That's the same thing with marketing for your open jobs. Like, if you're not out there actively marketing online for prospective employees, you might as well just give up on hiring, because it's going to be almost impossible.
Yeah, totally makes sense. And in this era of the Great Resignation and all these infinite options for people, it feels almost like more than ever you've had to, the same way that you can't count on 100% of your clients staying, assuming that there's some kind of churn, and having redundancy expectations for pipeline and revenue. It feels that same way with talent, because more than ever, we're going into this experience economy. Mm-hmm. And if you can't be providing this like uniform experience, then you're ultimately vulnerable, man. How do you think about that piece? The idea of like continuity for your clients and lack of disruption. Is that something that you've started to see that you can address with this type of stuff?
Absolutely. So many companies put an effort and emphasis on this customer experience. How do we create the best experience for our customers? And they forget that the only people that can do that are your employees, your team. And so if we aren't creating an amazing employee experience for, to your point, people that have options, then why should they stick around and take care of your customers? The unemployment numbers just came out. There are 2 open jobs in this country for every 1 unemployed person. And the reality is 3 to 4% of the population will always be unemployed. So we're at a point where those jobs that are open are only going to go to people that are leaving someone else. Very rarely are they going to go to someone who was sitting at home waiting for an opportunity to finally take it. So they have options.
2 open jobs for every single person looking for a job feels like a historical flip the script on the way that we need to like look at this stuff, right? Like, it's not like you are no longer Harvard and people are applying to you. You are now the person that's trying to apply to get into that school. Man, that type of mentality shift, is that, I would assume that based on your positioning and what you're doing, you see that as a giant opportunity, but is it getting easier for you? Like, is this something people are starting to really feel, or do you still have to like lead with this like point of view and have somebody like buy in on this, or
No,
is it hard to convince people?
You know, I know that there's talk about what's happening in the economy and are we entering recession, all these other things. And we see all these layoffs all the time. But the people that are getting laid off right now, we're really more in the white collar sectors, and more than half of this country is people that are out in service in the community. They're working on job sites. They're working on remote locations. I just read a stat, 5 million people now, their primary profession is driving for Amazon and Uber and Lyft and all these. I mean, that's what they're doing. 5 million people that used to be in the workforce are now on the roads, driving around, doing other services for other companies. And it's hard to get those people back. They get to set their own schedule. They don't have a boss breathing down their neck. They get to listen to the radio all day. I mean, it's a pretty killer job. So
yeah, I'd love to get paid to listen to podcasts. I want to get into how you figured out this like strategy, man, because I think that the origin story is really cool, just on a entrepreneurship operator standpoint. Can you tell me a little bit about how you discovered this big opportunity in the marketplace to build these like talent acquisition funnels for people?
Well, when I was in corporate, after I got out of college, I spent almost a decade in corporate, and we just used to hire. I mean, just hiring all the time. There was just rampant turnover. And what I realized was that the people that were coming in that were going to be the best fit for us actually aligned to our culture. They aligned to our value system. They aligned to these things. When I started my marketing business, I said, that's what's going to keep customers around, is this connection to your culture. Like, if you think about the companies that you like to do business with, they're usually companies that think like you think. They're companies that act like you want them to act. And as I'm helping my clients get more and more customers and retain them, we inevitably hit this problem of, I don't need more leads now. I don't have enough people to serve my customers. So pause the leads. And, I was young entrepreneur at the time, and I thought, heck, I've got a background in interviewing and hiring. I can totally help them solve this problem. And I went to a client and they said, you can do that. And I'm like, sure, let's find out if we can do that. I had no clue what I was doing, but I realized real early on that recruiting was a marketing issue. You see, if people don't know I'm hiring, number one, they're not going to apply for my jobs. Number two, if they don't like what they see, they're not going to apply for the job. And number three, if the timing is not right, they're not going to apply for the job. Right place, right people, right time. I mean, it's a marketing equation right there. So this one client who was just desperate for people, I was in the blue collar services at the time, and they had 4 empty trucks, and they're like, I just need at least one more technician. And I said, let me figure this out for you. It's a marketing problem. We can solve it. No big deal. 3 weeks later, they called me and they said, we got 4 trucks filled. We got 2 more trucks on order. I don't know what you did, but turn the leads back on. And at the time I thought, I hit a gold mine. I will help them with lead gen when the hiring's easy. And then when the hiring gets hard, I'll help them with hiring. I'll keep clients for life. But what I found was there's way more to it than just being able to get good people to apply. There's so much more to interviewing them and qualifying them and going through fulfillment or onboarding and engaging them. And so over time, over a couple of years, we just developed the CoreFit hiring system to help everybody create this employee experience so that it was easy to attract, hire, and retain the best people.
So good, dude. When you tell me this story, I think of my wife, who's an architect, and how I've learned that the formation of an architect is really the formation of a problem solver with a certain like set of limitations, right? Like, you frame something and they know exactly what's supposed to go in it and how to do it and how to execute. And until now, I never realized that the formation of a marketer is very similar. It's the formation of somebody that knows how to increased supply or increased demand given a limited supply of things, and how to take things from unaware to aware, and from aware to interested, and from interested to like inside. And it could really be, we only think of it as a customer acquisition standpoint, but it makes perfect sense that this is also a scientific method of acquiring just about anything that requires convincing in psychology, man. Like, what was the hardest? Was there a particularly hard mindset shift for you when you went from acquiring clients to acquiring talent, or was it all just one-to-one going into your system?
Oh, you make it sound so easy. No, it wasn't that easy. There were definitely some shifts. No. Well, I thought, you know what, if I can just help people source applicants, get a bunch of people applying, they know how to follow up. They know how to schedule interviews. They know how to interview them. They know how to onboard them. And that was my mistake, thinking that everybody knew how to do that stuff. And so I just wanted to help them with sourcing, which is just getting the right people to apply. And then I'd have clients call me and they're like, yeah, you sent me 60 people last week and all of them ghosted me. And I was like, well, is that them problem or is that a you problem? And so I really had to start digging deep and spending time with my clients and getting to understand, where are these bottlenecks really at? And how do we make sure that we create this streamlined process? Because at the end of the day, the last thing I want one of my clients to be known for is a place that gets a lot of people to apply, but then they never hear from the employer. Right? Which is so commonplace right now. And I mean, that's one of the worst reputations you can have. Don't apply with them, because when you do, you won't hear back anyways.
I was going to save this for like later in the interview, but let's go down this path, right? We are talking a lot about this like word of mouth stuff, of how the way that you hire drives word of mouth. If you have great employees, it drives word of mouth. You just mentioned something that if the people that you don't hire can affect your reputation. Tell me a little bit more about that and why it's important to have a gracious interview process, particularly for the people that you're not hiring.
Well, I mean, unless you're in one of the top largest metropolitan areas in the country, people talk. And if you're in an industry where maybe there's not millions of people that want to be in that industry, that want to work for you, a lot of people are going to know each other. And so just like you don't want any customers out there giving bad press, you don't want any job seekers out there giving bad press either. And with the invention of Glassdoor and Indeed reviews, I mean, job seekers are even posting on Yelp and Google reviews now. I mean, with these reputation sites, it's just so easy for your reputation to get damaged if you're not taking care and creating a great experience for people.
Yeah, totally, man. Employer brand really matters more than ever. And I feel I don't know. I live in Jacksonville now. It's a smaller market, but Miami, even though it's a bigger market, felt like a small town at times, right? So if you develop a reputation in any industry in, I don't know, like, is it New York, Dallas, and San Francisco that it doesn't apply for? Like it feels like everywhere it feels like, no matter how big it is, your industry is still a small town full of yappers, right? Like, yeah, you gotta be mindful of that stuff.
One of the things we do an audit for everybody. And we say, hey, let's pretend I'm a job seeker for a second and I'm just researching you. How easy is it to find your jobs? How easy to find information about you? You know what's really easy to find is that disgruntled employee that wrote a bad review.
The one-star review. Yeah.
It's always the easiest thing to find. Yeah. We just had a client the other day call us and they're like, the ex-employee said, if I could give this place 0 stars, I would. And you know how easy it was to find that? It was super easy. I don't know if they were applying, if they were hiring, like if they could apply anywhere, super easy to find that. And, the search engines, while they may be your friend at times, their client is the job seeker, not you, which is why they charge you to advertise, because they're there to create relevant search results for the person searching. And if that person's searching and they want to know about your company, are they going to give them the "we're hiring" ad? Or are they going to give them the 0-star review?
Yeah. Pain sells more than pleasure, for sure. Right. Absolutely. And these are, what kills me about this stuff, these are these like hidden costs that you might be killing yourself as an entrepreneur, as a leader, doing all these great things. And you don't even know that this stuff is harming you in the background, right? Like, can you give a couple of tips of, if I wanted to go and and check out kind of like where I stand on these hidden costs of bad reviews and things of the sort? When you're doing these audits, can you give like a couple of tips quickly of people, how you can go check yourself out online?
So the first thing to do is think like a job seeker. You're going to have to do that. If you can't do it, you struggle with it, grab someone on your team that's new, that still likes working for you, and say, how would you do this? But the easiest thing to do is put your company name in and the word jobs afterwards. Easiest thing, put that into Google and see what comes up. If your job ads aren't the first thing coming up, you got some work to do. But often you'll see Yelp, you'll see Glassdoor, you'll see Indeed. And Google does this by default. They automatically pull your reviews in and put it right there on that link before someone clicks. And don't look at this as an opportunity to just get mad at the world and say, oh, these reviews are all bogus. What do they know? Take this as an opportunity to get some better reviews. Go talk to your team. Say, hey, can you review me on Indeed? Can you review me on Glassdoor? Can you help me out here? It's amazing. I hear this all the time. People think, employers especially, they think that their team doesn't care, that they're short-staffed, and they won't help, and they don't want to help. Well, the reality is your team that's short-staffed, they're tired. They're burnt out. They're tired of the overtime. They think you don't care because you're not fixing the problem. So if you just go to your team and say, I need help fixing this problem, here are a couple things I need you to do. You put a good review on Glassdoor. You put a good review on Indeed. Like, your team will help. They want to help. But that's one of the first things we look at is what's on that first page of Google. Just like if you were going to a marketing company and you said, hey, I want more business. What are they going to do? They're going to go Google you and they're going to say, well, here's what the first page looks like. Here's what you got to do to fix it. Same exact thing.
Interesting, man. So I just did this while you were looking, and we've never used job, boards to hire or anything like that, right? We're still a small business. We've mostly hired through word of mouth and stuff like that. And the first stuff I put in be-the-stage.live/jobs. And the first 5 things that came up was like podcasts I've been on, which again is still employer branding, right? Like this is still like, if someone can go listen to me talk about how I care about relationships over everything, still helps. I'm just glad it wasn't somebody that, said that we suck or whatever.
Even if the bad stuff is on page 2, that's okay. Like, it's way better than the bad stuff being on page 1. Not saying you have bad stuff, but that's another thing. If you can't alter the bad stuff enough, create enough new content to bury it.
Great tip, man. Great tip. And listen, I was, the last place that I worked for had, a couple of ripoff reports that were just like top 2 search results when you look up the founder's name. And it was just like super brutal for hiring. It was super brutal for everything. Right. But so let's get away from the why and whatever. I assume that people hanging out with us are in. I would love to hear you in the chat. If there's anything that we can clarify there on the why, let us know or put it in the Q&A. I want to get into some tactical stuff. Another big parallel, Ryan, that I think is genius that you talk about is this idea of when you really start doing it, you're not starting with like, what's the trick? What's the job ad, whatever. It's who's the person, right? Like, tell me a little bit more about the importance of knowing who you actually need.
Yeah. I say this a lot in our work. If you want to be attractive to good people, you have to become attractive to good people. I know it's super common sense, right? Like, it sounds so silly.
Yeah.
But if you want to attract good people, you need to first figure out, who is it that you want to attract? Let's define them. We create customer personas all the time in our marketing, so we don't just waste money by throwing stuff up against the wall to see if it sticks. We create a customer persona and we say, who are we speaking to? And then we go create content for that, or we go create ads for that. You need to do the same thing when you're hiring. Figure out who is that ideal person. Now, when you're creating an ideal employee or an avatar for employment, you got to be careful because you don't get to use the same things you get to use in customer branding. Right? You have to think about, there's a lot of protected classes in there. Like, you can get yourself into a lot of legal trouble. If you say it's this age, this gender, right? Like, this marital status, do they have kids or not? Like, you can get in trouble for a lot of that stuff. So what we do is we focus on the behaviors. What are the behaviors that you're looking for in a person? And in order to answer that question, you have to first figure out what behaviors are alive and well inside of your organization. So this is where we talk about core values and your vision and your purpose and understanding your company culture. And then usually the right answer is, I want people that fit in that. That's the right answer. I want people that fit in that. And then you say, okay, well, the people that fit in that, where do they spend their time? Who do they hang out with? What do they do for fun? Like, you can't go after the demographics, but you can definitely go after psychographics. And you start thinking about this. When I was growing up, I remember being on a little league team, and I remember it was like a local car dealership sponsored all our jerseys. And they did it because they were like, well, if mom and dad have disposable income to put the kid in little league, maybe they'll buy a car from me. But nowadays, imagine doing that. And instead of it being buy a car on the back of the jersey, it's discover we're the best team in our community. And now all of a sudden you got 40 parents sitting back there seeing the back of your jersey that you sponsor for your kid's little league team, talking about how great an employer they are. But see, you don't know that stuff unless you figure out the people that are going to fit best on my team, put their kids in little league. Like, you have to think through that. Otherwise, you just end up spending money and, throwing mud up against the wall and hoping it sticks.
I love that, man. So then, to summarize what you're saying, it's a little trickier because you can't put in certain age, certain ethnicity, whatever income level or number of kids, but you can, again, follow the trends of marketing and follow the psychographic, follow the behavior. Essentially, what are they incentivized for, right? Like, what are the things that they see as making their life better, and go to those places to advertise. Forever, I go to this like law firm marketing conference, and I'm always telling the workman comp guys that, why don't you guys sponsor the soccer team where all the, like the local soccer team where all the workforce families have their kids in soccer, right? Heavy Hispanic populations in this demographic. A lot of them are playing soccer, and give everybody like a baseball card that has their kids like stat on it, and, bring like a professional photographer to like league day and give everybody like their like little card and have them carry around that thing on their work truck. You don't think that the moment that somebody gets injured, they're going to make that phone call? I feel like same thing could happen with somebody that is looking to hire in that same demographic. It's just like the day that their boss like yells at them, they're going to call you, right? So getting creative with like where they're at and the places that they are, spending time, and how you can do that. I find that genius. Do you have like a framework of questions that you ask people so that they can kind of identify these psychographics? Is there something that somebody can like turn around and go internally and be like, all right, for example, I'll give you myself, right? Like, I was just talking to Gina, our COO, and saying that, what I really value is curiosity, right? Like, I value a staff that is motivated to solve a problem and also curious in their own right to like look stuff up. And I mean, is that enough of a psychographic? Do I need to go deeper into that?
It's a start for sure. I mean, I'm sure curiosity is not the only thing you value. My 6-year-old is curious. You're not going to want to hire him, right?
Yeah.
There's probably other things, but I think that's a great place to start. So if you wanted to know if someone's curious, think about the things that someone who's curious, are the things that they do as a result of them being curious? They probably read a lot. They learn. Maybe they're the type of person that likes to disassemble and reassemble. Maybe they've got a hobby where they're rebuilding cars or motorcycles or something like that. Yeah. And then you can say, okay, well, now that I know where those behaviors show up, now I can start figuring out where I need to spend my time. Where do I need to spend my advertising dollars to get in front of those people? And then when it comes to asking questions to validate that, it's all why questions. What's the last book you read? They give you a book. Why? Now you're going to find out, did they read it because they wanted to escape their personal life? Or is it because they were curious? Why choose that hobby? Why do this in your spare time? And you can start asking those why questions to really just dig deep and go, is this something they value as well? Or is it just a pastime for them?
Got it. So now it's not even, you're using this not just to figure out where people are, but now you're talking about how you create an interview structure that sorts for these things. I love that. So talk me from the identification of who the person is. What's the next step after that, right? Like once we figure out what the type of person we're trying to hire, and we know and we have a guess for where they hang out, what kind of things are we building out next?
So the next thing, we call it the core fit profile, which is really it's just a full profile of the person, the right person that's going to fit in the role for your company. So it's great that we have a whole bunch of curious people working for you, but now they got to be doing something. So let's get really clear on what it is that they're doing to bring value to the organization, bring value to your clients or to your market. And the next step, and I find that this is one of the hardest for employers, and I don't know why, is what we call the core responsibilities. What are the 3 to 5 responsibilities that they have as someone on your team that if they don't do them, they don't get done and your organization or your clients suffer from it? So what are those core responsibilities? And this isn't, oh, they've got to log something into a computer. That's not a responsibility. That's an activity. What's the responsibility? Well, they need to make sure that our clients are satisfied because their orders got placed correctly. They're responsible for making sure clients are satisfied. The way they do that is by making sure that orders are placed correctly. And just getting really clear on those few things. What happens a lot of times is we get this laundry list. I had one company, they heard me talk and they're like, I got that job ad you were talking about. It was like 7 pages long for an electrician. And they're like, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, electricians don't do half this work. They're like, yes, I know, but it takes like an act of God to get this thing updated. So we just keep adding to it. Adding to it's easier than removing. And your job seekers see that and they go, no, I can't do all that, or I'm not going to do all that. So you got to get really clear on what it is that they're going to be doing. So you got to make sure that they're clear on the culture fit, but then you got to make sure that you're really clear on the position fit. Just because they're the right person for your company doesn't mean they're the right person in that role.
You talk about this like personality profile that you're writing out reminds me of, and I'm just kind of cross-contextualizing it to giving value to this HR function across other models, right? Like my business coach, Jerry, talks about creating your own personal operational manual, right? Like give to your direct reports how you like to be treated and the things that you like to do, because you make it easy for them, right? So I'm foreseeing this thing as kind of like, hey, this is going to be your operationals manual. I'm hearing you saying, don't talk about the features that we need from you, talk about the benefits we need from you, right? Like it's not what your activities are going to be. It's what we expect you to deliver from these activities from a benefit standpoint. Where does that stuff go? Is that to craft the job description? Is that to craft, one last parallel. Just like in a hotly contested market, you can't have a 10-question onboarding sequence because you're not going to get enough leads. Nobody's going to fill it out, right? Like you're talking about keeping it contextual to the demand of not making them jump through too many hoops in the first part because you want them to get to that second phase, right?
Yeah.
Where does that stuff go? Once you've identified these benefits that you want from them, that they're going to be expected to deliver on, is that what you are populating into the job description? Is that what you're populating into the interview? Tell me more about that.
Yeah. So once you know their core responsibilities, then you look at how you're going to measure their performance. And then finally, the last part is disqualifying indicators. And those are the things that when you see it, there's just something, it's a red flag. There's something in your gut saying that's not the right person. Once you've gotten really clear on those things, it makes it super easy to write a great job ad. And it makes it really easy to write interview questions because you've done all of the planning up front. You know who you want, you know what you want. So now it's just a matter of just putting pen to paper and writing it. And another thing that's really important too, we run into this a lot. You use the word job description. And I think a lot of people use job description to mean everything. It's what HR has. It's what legal signed off on. It's what you post on the job boards. It's everything is this job description. And one of the beliefs that we have is that there's a difference between that job description and the job advertisement. They are different. They are different documents. They are written different. They have different purposes. And so I just want to make sure everybody's really clear. What your attorney gives you or what HR gives you is not what you put out online.
Interesting.
So imagine that the engineering team or the mechanical team gave GM the maintenance schedule for the brand new Corvette. And they said, this is what everybody needs to know about buying a Corvette. Rotate the tires, when to change the oil, how to break it in, how fast you can go. And that's what they posted online. How many people you think would buy a Corvette? No, what they do is they go to the marketing team and they get the Corvette convertible, the top down, they're on the Pacific Coast Highway, young, attractive couple, loving life. And that's all you know about this car. But we do this all the time when we're looking for people. We take that maintenance schedule, the bulleted list of all the stuff they need to know, and we go throw it up on Indeed. And it looks just like everybody else's and is nothing different about it. Instead, we encourage you to write a job ad, which is a marketing piece. Sell it, get people excited about it. So I just wanted to clarify that. That's just one of my pet peeves on the job descriptions.
Dude, I love it. I love it. And I love this about you, right? You speak in these stories that I think is, the sign of a great communicator, man. So I'm really enjoying this. Tell me more about how do you write a great job ad that doesn't look like a job description that allows you to differentiate? Tell me more about that.
So there's a few sections that we like, but the lead-in is the most important part. I mean, it's been said that the purpose of the title is to get someone to read the first sentence. Purpose of the first sentence, get them to read the first paragraph. Yep. You know where we're going, right? Okay. So it's the same thing when you're writing an ad. What are you doing to draw people in? Compel them. Tell them why you're better for them, not why they'd be better coming to you. Like sell them, like sell yourself. And, one of the things that we see a lot is that people forget why people switch jobs. They forget. There's this mentality of, and this is why I think we're in such the trouble we are right now with the job market, is there's this mentality of, I'm the employer. They need a job more than I need them. They should be honored. They should be privileged to come work for me. And there's this mentality, and it's slowly going away. But you have to remember that looking for work is one of life's most stressful events. I don't know when the last time you looked for a job. Most entrepreneurs forget, right? They've been doing it for so long, they forget. But we often ask their team, who likes looking for work? There's never a hand in the room going up. People hate it. They're taking
like on par with moving, right?
Yeah. They're taking a huge risk. And often people don't look for work because they want to. They look for work because they have to. Because you have to remember, people don't leave jobs. People leave bosses. They leave managers and leaders and toxic cultures. And when the pain of changing, the pain of looking for a new job is less than the pain of where they're at, that's when they'll move. And you have to remember that there's this huge emotional drain for people looking for work. And if we don't make sure that we make this process easy for them, if we don't make this process compelling for them, they're going to go move on to the next one. I mean, it's why Google gets 35,000 applications a month. Like they have no shortage of people wanting to apply at Google and Facebook and Apple. Even with the layoffs, people are still applying like crazy. They're like, maybe there's a chance for me now.
Yeah.
Right? Because their reputation is out there and people want to do that. Well, they can get away with bad job ads because their reputation precedes them. You can't. Because I promise you, unless you've been really intentional about this for the last couple of years, your reputation as an employer is not as good as you think it is.
Strong, man. As you're talking about all of this, I'm like, is there a category for hiring ad copywriter? Like, is there anybody branding themselves as that right now? Right? Like if I wanted to find somebody that could do a great job of writing great employer ad copy, right? Like what would I be looking for? Like what kind of stuff are they putting in a sample?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, we do that. But
I'm sure you do. I'm sure you're the category king of it, right?
Just to do that. You know, there are a lot of people that'll write job ads.
Yeah.
But they might be slightly variant from what's out there, from what's typical. Now, I would say if you want to learn how to do this or you want to find someone that's writing job ads for tech companies or startups, because they're going to have more compelling ads. Now, the problem is, unless you're a tech company or a startup, you're not going to have the ping pong tables and the Xboxes and the lunch bars. You're going to be able to sell all that stuff. But usually they get more creative. Like they get more creative. They take someone from the marketing department. We had a large fast casual restaurant chain, quick serve restaurants, right? I forget, they got like 50 or 60 locations. And they heard me talk. And I said, if you really want to get this recruiting piece, this sourcing piece fixed, take it away from your HR team and give it to your marketing team. And then a couple of weeks later, they were on a webinar and they're like, you want to know what transformed recruiting for us? Was taking the job ad writing and the posting and the advertising away from the HR team and giving it to our marketing team. And it transformed. Like all of a sudden things were working so much better, because remember, HR is there to protect you and to protect your people. They're a compliance function. They are not a marketing function.
Yeah, they're not trained in persuasion, right? They're trained in like risk management
Absolutely.
and other things.
So I would say if you could find someone that's a great persuasive copywriter, that would probably be the closest thing out there. Persuasive copywriter, which is someone who writes sales copy. That's what you want.
Yeah, that's an interesting opportunity out there and an interesting category to
explore. Definitely.
Yeah. All right. Then let's get off the ad copy and let's get into an interview. What makes a great interview process?
One that you've documented and built out. So many people just wing the interview.
Yeah.
I was just talking to someone this morning, and most interviews are, oh, hey, I'm so glad to meet you. Oh yeah, what was your name again? Like they don't even pay attention to who they're interviewing. And they're like, well, come on, we want to see if we like you. Here's a mirror. Like, I'm being facetious now, but like, can you fog this mirror for me? Like, you passed. Like, that's most interviews these days, because employers are so scared that if they go slow or they take their time, that person's going to go hop somewhere else. And I will tell you that if someone's compelled to actually sit down and have an interview with you, and you create opportunities for engagement during that interview, they're not going to pass you up for someone else. They'll wait a week. They'll wait a month if it means to do it, knowing that they have an opportunity with you. So think about the interview like the sales process. The more pressure you put on the prospect, the more likely the prospect's going to be pressured to leave. Same thing happens here in the interview. If they can smell desperation, if they walk in and they're like, this person's got commission breath like crazy, guess what the job seeker is going to do? They're going to expect that every day for the rest of their life is going to be like that. And they're going to go work for someone else. So you've got to be intentional about creating a great interview process.
Man, so many golden nuggets, right? Like this idea of like sensing desperation as a suitor is something that we are so familiar with in everything, right? Like dating, sales, meeting anybody, right? Like we're so used to that and nobody thinks even twice about that, man. You're taking me back to my old, as I started my career in the world of a big subcontractor, right? And I remember making these same exact mistakes. It was just like, oh my God, you're here. I really need a payroll person. I really need an installation installer. Like, what do I got to do to get you into this job? Like a used car salesman. And those were all my biggest mistakes, right? And now we have this different sales interview process. Gina has a bunch of different hoops to jump through. And I love what you're saying, right? Like make it compelling. It reminds me of kind of like the advice I give to a lot of people in networking when they're asking me about follow-up. I'm like, man, your follow-up matters much less if you make a phenomenal first impression, right? Like they're going to be really pumped up for the next one if you look great. So how do you kind of like think about the structure of impressing someone versus them passing a test? Like, do you have a standard like 3-step process? Does it change for people? Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So there are 4 stages to the interview. The first one is the screening stage. We're all familiar with screening. You're looking at their application, you're making a phone call, validating some information, and then you're scheduling an interview if you like them, right? That's the screening stage. The second stage is our culture fit. So are they going to align to your culture? Are they someone that you want to have on your team? And you do that first. Most people want to do that later, but you do that first because they might have just applied for the wrong job. Or we've seen this happen too, where people are like, I don't know where you've been my whole life. This isn't the job for you, but I will make one for you so you don't leave. Then the third stage is the position fit. Can they do the job that you're paying them to do? And then finally, the fourth stage is what we call the pullback offer. This is where you make them the offer, but before everybody agrees, you sit down and you have a conversation where you set expectations. And you get really clear on the fact that we're all human beings that aren't perfect, that are going to make mistakes. And what do we do when that stuff happens? So those are those 4 stages. And with the screening stage, the whole purpose of that is this someone I want to spend more time with? It's all you're looking for. So get rid of the non-negotiables. Like if you got to be 18 to work here or 25 to get insured and they're 21, sorry, it's not going to work. Like that's a non-negotiable. I don't have any flexibility there. But it's amazing how few things are actually non-negotiable. And then, is this someone you want to spend some time with during an interview? I joke all the time, but I remember someone sent me a whole bunch of video interviews one time. And there was this one gal, and if I had to, just the way her voice was pitched and the way she talked just drove me nuts. If I had to listen to her every day, there is no way that would have been a good relationship, right? Yeah. I'm just being honest. Like, we all have our biases, we all have our pings, the things that are going to drive us nuts, and we need to be out on the lookout for those. So the rest of them, I know we don't have time to go into all the stages, but the rest of it, what I would say is, think of the interview as a process built on processes, not on necessarily questions. People know how to answer, where do you want to be in 5 years? What are your career goals? Can you turn this wrench? Can you do this job? They know what you want to hear. So instead, create processes throughout the interview, things where you get to see those behaviors come to life. And then you're able to evaluate whether or not they're going to be the right fit based on that.
Got it. So if I heard you correctly, phase 1 is, non-negotiable screening. Phase 2 is culture fit. Phase 3 is job fit. Phase 4 is like, what's going to happen if something goes wrong, kind of thing.
Yeah. Like, so I use dating analogies a lot. So imagine that. I ask people all the time, pretend that the person that you've moved in with, think about a person you moved in with. You're sitting in the driveway, and before you move in with them, you got this checklist you both go through that says, okay, let's agree on how we squeeze a tube of toothpaste. Let's agree on which way the toilet paper goes. Yeah. Do the shoes get kicked off in the hallway, or do they got to go into the closet? Like, imagine, think of all the little things that are not deal breakers, but just annoying when you first move in with someone. Yeah. That had you figured all those things out up front, would have made the first 6 months way smoother. We have the same thing inside of our workplace. And if we just recognize those and we share them and say, let's talk about these things that are going to happen. Or let's say that I notice that you get really distracted and you struggle making eye contact with me during the interview, but I like you and I think you're going to be a great fit. But you're going to be customer facing, and customers will be looking at you all the time. And we don't want our customers to think that you're distracted. Let's have that conversation before I put you on the floor. Let's talk about what that's like. Maybe it's something you're aware of and you've been working on it. I shouldn't discount you without calling it out. I shouldn't say, oh, he's not going to be able to pull it off. Let's have a conversation. Maybe it's something you know of. Maybe it's something you're working on, and you'd be willing to work on it harder if someone holds you accountable to it. Let's have that conversation.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, one of the things I want to move on to another part of it, but one of the things that keeps popping up for me right now is in the white collar world where people can take a day off and like go shadow someone, and you have these kind of like availabilities of doing it. I could see how this makes a lot of sense, but you do a lot of the stuff in the blue collar world, right? In the piece rate guys and the hourly day, like you get paid per day that you're there. How do you find that this kind of like long drawn out process? If I was to be like, man, I can't take a day off of work to do this thing 4 times and sit down with you. How am I supposed to do that when I'm supposed to be hanging gutters right now? Like, how do you overcome that piece?
Well, let me clarify something. There's 4 stages. Doesn't mean it's 4 meetings.
Got it.
Okay. I want to be really clear. You can't do all 4 stages in 25 minutes, right? But maybe you schedule an hour, hour and a half. Maybe they come in, and this is another thing too. Maybe you do interviews in the evening because they're employed. Right? It's funny. We've had some clients in the past that create these 4-hour interviews, these really elaborate interviews. And I was like, who can take off 4 hours from work? And they're like, well, probably nobody. I'm like, but you told me you only want to hire people that are having jobs. Like, you don't want to hire unemployed people because they typically don't work out. So you have to make sure you create a process that supports that. And sometimes it means interviewing in the afternoons or on a weekend. But yeah, it's not 4 meetings. It's just 4 stages. So once you close stage 1, you don't go back to it. So once there's a culture fit, you just stay out of culture fit. Like, you've done that work. Now we just focus on position. But here's the thing. There are people out there that you will never be able to compete because money is all it's about, right? We work with a lot of guys in construction where they'll have a whole crew leave for a new prevailing wage job. And they'll be like, I'm going to go make $25 more an hour at this prevailing wage job. And sorry, boss, that's what I'm going to do. And they're like, you do realize in 6 weeks, you're going to be out of work. They're like, yeah, but you'll take me back. And they do, because they're desperate. Yeah. Right? So some of it is the employers have to solve this problem. But I found that especially in the trades, a lot of people, they want to feel valued. Right? I look at the work that Mike Rowe is doing in the trades and how he wants to get kids excited. And I just saw this week. There was an article that said that college enrollments are down and apprenticeships are up by 50%. Like people are starting to go, wait a minute, I can go work in the trades and not get laid off every couple of years and not do these things. And so it's becoming more attractive. But here's the thing about the trades, especially, is that I believe that employers have sort of treated the knowledge work, the white collar jobs, kind of like the newspapers treated the internet 25 years ago. It's not going to affect me. It's not going to hurt me. And what happens is in the trades, we kept everybody at $22, $24 an hour. Well, heck, I can go load boxes for Amazon for $24 an hour.
Yeah.
Sure, I got to take the risk. I might get laid off if Amazon slows down, but I don't got to worry about the safety issues. I don't got to work out in the heat. I don't got to do all these other things that you don't reward me for. And so when the employer gets really clear on their company culture and the way they want to treat people, it's amazing how many people will take notice and go, that's a team I want to be a part of.
My favorite part about this overall message is this like overall empathy that you have towards everybody involved in the equation, right? Like this idea that's like, man, if you want to attract the best people and they can't take a day off of work, you got to do interviews in the evening, right? Like, and you got to adjust to that as opposed to making them do what you do. And having the self-awareness of an employer of where you sit in the scale of supply and demand in this world that we're in right now, where who would have ever thought we would have a knowledge worker recession, right? Yeah. Like, I really think the level of awareness is so paramount right now to success in business. And everything that I'm hearing here is attach the same amount of awareness that you need to give to client acquisition and to, customer success and all these things into your HR function so that you can have great talent, so that all this other stuff gets easier down the line. It feels like the atomic unit input. Like if you're doing this, everything else is going to get easier down the line.
Absolutely.
And, yeah, man. And in 10 minutes, we're going to go into the open mic session. So don't be shocked when Rowan gives you an invite to come be a panelist, and we're going to open up the conversation. But right now I'd love to talk about my favorite subject, which is word of mouth and how you see this idea of word of mouth playing into this strategy. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So most everybody listening has probably heard of an employee referral program or being able to reward employees for referring people to join your team. And most employers love the idea, all the ones we talked to, they love the idea of an employee referral program because they know that you will only need to process 7% of your applications that you would normally present. I mean, I don't know what that is. That's not even a tenth of the applications to get the same number of hires through referrals that you will if you go to the job boards. So it's way more cost effective. It's way faster. It's way less a burden on your team if you can get employee referrals. And people will also agree that when you hire an employee referral, they tend to be a really good employee. But no one's ever stopped for a second to think about how do we make sure that these are really effective for us? Like it works once or it works twice and they're like, yeah, I'm pumped. This works. I'm going to keep doing it. And then crickets. And then you're just thinking, why is no one telling me how cool it is to work? Why is no one telling their friends how cool it is to work here? Why do they not do this? And I see employers just banging their head all the time. They're like, nobody wants to refer anybody. They're not going to help me. And we go in and we'll ask their team, how many of you know how many people we need to hire right now? And they'll look around. They're like, we're hiring? What? I just thought my boss didn't care. And the overtime was mandatory because it was cheaper for him. No, he needs to hire 12 people like now. And how many of you know that? And they're like, I had no idea. So I think the important thing about word of mouth to understand is someone has to start the chain in order for it to happen. So if you're not communicating with your team that you need to hire, who you need to hire, what positions you're looking to fill, how often you need to hire. Like if you're not communicating, and I mean, not just, I told him at the last monthly luncheon. No, like every day. Hey, put it up on the scoreboard, right? We got 12 people we need to hire today. And then tomorrow we celebrate when it's down to 11, right? And make sure that your team knows, because if your team doesn't know, they can't go out and refer people for you. So that's the first thing. The second thing is to understand that even though your people may want to refer, they're not equipped to do it. Like pick any role out there that's not recruiter and they don't have the tools, they don't have the skills, they don't know what to say. So I have this little joke where, I tell people, I'm like, here's what normally happens. So let's say that I am out there and my buddy is looking for work. And he wants to switch jobs, or maybe I don't know, but I just want him to come work here because I think it'd be cool. The conversation goes something like this. I'm like, hey, Scott, how you doing, man? Yeah, good. Hey, I know that your wife's a little pissed at me for that last crazy weekend event where we, left and we had a little too much fun, but I have another idea. I think she's going to love this one. How about you tell her that you're going to quit your job and come work at the company I'm at? And this is the best part, I'm going to get $500 if you do it. Like, how do you think that flies with his wife? Yeah. But this is what we do. We say, hey, I'll give you money if you refer. And then nobody refers. Well, because we don't equip them with the tools. We don't teach them how to have the conversation. We don't give them an incentive for the person that has to quit their job and come work here. And that's what they want. I mean, every employer on the planet does not, I've never had one say, I would love to get someone that's unemployed to come work here. They all want people that are gainfully employed, especially in this market. So you're asking me to call my friend and tell him to quit his job. But imagine that the conversation was a little different. And here's a tip that I would recommend. Imagine that the incentive, yeah, sure, maybe you give me a little reward for referring, but imagine there was an incentive for him taking the risk. We do a lot, we talked about in the blue collar space. Very rarely do these guys get any paid time off. It's very rare. Imagine that I call him and I say, hey, Scott, I know your wife's still a little upset with me, but I got a crazy idea. You know how she's been wanting to take that week-long trip to go visit her parents back east? So here's the deal. If you tell her that you're going to quit your job, my boss is going to give you a week's PTO within your first 90 days of employment. Who cares what I get? He doesn't care. She doesn't care. You're going to get a week paid time off. Like literally you can take a week off of work, go do whatever she wants to do, and you're still going to get paid for it. It's a good one. And what's a week of PTO cost? Nothing. No. It's minimal. But we don't think this way. We think I'd rather reward the person. So give me $500. I don't care. Here's the reality. I want people that I like working with me. Gallup does a Q12 survey. It's an engagement survey. And there's an 80% success rate of someone being engaged if they have a best friend at work. So let's create opportunities for them to have best friends at work. I would rather have my buddy come work with me than probably worry about $500. But I'm not going to go have that conversation and risk the friendship because there's nothing in it for him.
I love that, man. Again, the key to it being seeing it from the person's eyes that you're communicating with, not from my own benefit, right? Like, and how you can make these win-win opportunities happen is kind of like the interwoven thing in all of the stuff that you keep saying, which feels like common sense, but it's so uncommon, right? Like people just don't think about this stuff across all business functions, and much less when it comes to these kinds of things, which is why I love your message. Can I ask you, we've talked a little bit about employer branding and how it all fits into this in the word of mouth equation, right? Like this idea that if you have bad reputation on the internet, to me it was pretty eye-opening, this idea that I searched Be the Stage jobs and a bunch of my podcasts came out. So I wonder, you come from the marketing world, right? Like, do you talk to your clients as far as if their CEO or their leader is making content out on the internet or trying to drive a personal brand as a leader, like as some kind of evangelist about the way that the company does things versus other people? Is that starting to take place? And does that help people get talent, right? Because I see, I see with my clients, I've seen it already where I was out. One of my clients, JWB, they buy lunch every single day, right? One of their perks, right? They did the math and they're like, dude, if we pay for lunch and we add an extra half hour to everybody's productivity plus all the good stuff, people love it and we win. And we were out there on Tuesdays. They do like food truck Tuesdays. And I was there on a Tuesday and this guy comes up. He's like, hey, Greg, I just want to say, I heard you on a podcast and it made me want to apply for a job here. Now I'm working here. Right. Like, are you starting to see that happen more of people finding out about the stuff and the content that you put out as a leader on LinkedIn or across social media being something that helps them land better qualified talent, or helps that referral program be able to be like,
Sure.
hey man, like this is the dude I work for. He's an awesome guy. Check him out. Talking about how he cares about people.
It's funny when you're telling me that. I got a couple of stories. I know we're running out of time, but I'll share one. We work with this construction company, small construction company, a couple hundred employees. No one ever heard of them. They're subcontractor to large federal contracts. So it's not like there's any reason for them to have a website or be marketing or anything like that. We started working with them a few years ago, and I'll never forget, the owner called me. He goes, you're not going to believe this. I go, what's that? He goes, I got a phone call. I thought it was a prank. Turned out it was Discovery Channel, and they want us on the premiere episode of the reboot of Dirty Jobs with Mike Rowe. And I'm like, this is real? He's like, yeah. He goes, everywhere that they searched, everywhere they looked, we just kept popping up. And I kept popping up as the expert. And they're like, if there's somebody to help us with this, it's this guy. And it was my client. He was on the premiere episode of Dirty Jobs. Do you know how easy it was for them to hire after that?
Right. Yeah.
Right? And that was just one example. And now, same guy is doing a lot of creating influence in the space of robotics. And they're in construction. And all of a sudden, they just had this big launch. And I mean, there's articles popping up like crazy about how they're using robotics in construction. And it's just creating more and more of this buzz about, wow, this is a company that says they're a leader in the industry, and they prove it. And that's just powerful stuff.
Yeah. Love that, man. The positive externalities of making content for your company, to me, have yet to start scratching the surface from what I see anecdotally and people doing it. Ryan, you are a phenomenal content creator, man. Like I gotta say, like I've really, really enjoyed this conversation. Roanne is inviting everybody up as panelists. So come on up, and you're going to be part of the open mic session. You can go. I'm sure that you're busy, or you can stick around however long you want. But I got to tell you, man, I've really enjoyed the two interactions we've had so far. Have been great, but I really admire people that are leading their company as great communicators, and you do it right. Like you are such a good polished speaker. You've got your like stories. The way you speak in stories is something that I greatly admire. And I have to assume that really, really helps you as a leader. And these efforts that you are creating by evangelizing this point of view and doing what you do, I think it really is in the blue collar space. Like I really think that this is the blueprint of how a CEO helps his team win, by being out there and leading the charge and evangelizing this stuff. So I'm just like really pumped that we got to meet, man. I really admire the journey that you've been on, and I see you kind of like as an example of where I can be in a couple of years. So thanks for being on the show, man. I really appreciate you being a part of all this. Can you let people know where to connect with you when they want more of this good stuff?
Absolutely. You mentioned LinkedIn. We're on LinkedIn. You can look me up. My last name is spelled Englin. It's not like the country, even though it sounds like it. And then the other way is corematters.com. It's where we have all of our content, podcasts, videos, training, everything is at corematters.com.
Awesome, man.